Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Palis, and today we will be discussing hybrid team planning. We all know that planning resources is challenging enough, but when we throw in teams and named people, it gets even more challenging. So today we're going to look at this problem, this challenge, and then look at how Tempus can help us to solve it. Okay, so presumably you're here because you have this challenge. A mix of named and team resources, likely in a multi-methodology environment. But if not, why should you care about this problem? And if you haven't already, but it's likely going to happen in your organization, and that is an agile transformation or an agile journey or an agile investment. This hybrid team planning challenge really emerges from the widespread growth of agile. And if you're unaware or unfamiliar, I've included three critical points of data here from well-known organizations. Boston Consulting Group did a study in 2024 of their clients, and then well beyond that, showing that 94% of the organizations they surveyed had embarked on an agile transformation initiative. Embarked can mean a lot of things. McKinsey & Company, we all know that name. They did a much more fulsome study of the market beyond current clients. They went much wider scale. Also a 2024 report, which you're free to go look up. And they found that 78% of the businesses that they surveyed had embarked or implemented some form of agile. And then I included something here from Gartner and was able to find a study from 2021, which, given how quickly things move nowadays, is kind of old, but at the time, so 3+ years ago, they found that 31% of the companies they surveyed, which was, again, a pretty large net they cast, 31% had, quote-unquote, widely adopted agile techniques or agile methodologies, which means that those that are doing sort of, pinky toe approach or just starting the process is probably much, much larger. Okay, so this is all great. But if we look at organizations, we're finding that there's actually substantial dissatisfaction with the benefits of what Agile is providing. I would posit, and you're going to see more of this in a moment, kind of my conclusion is that it's for that lack of hybrid team planning that's causing this amount of dissatisfaction and the growth and increase in dissatisfaction, in that, again, organizations are going to have a mixed set of methodologies, some agile, operational, as well as waterfall, and that's really always going to be the case, and that requires a hybrid team planning approach. But to really drive the point home, if we look at large companies that were surveyed, in particular large and mid-size did express higher degrees of dissatisfaction. Of the large companies surveyed, only 43% said that Agile was working well, which means that the complement, or north of 50%, said that it's not working well. And this is taken from the State of Agile report, which I found really intriguing. It's a great document to pull from. Surprisingly, they published as well that there's declining satisfaction amongst not just large businesses, but mid-size as well. And the number of, or the percentage of respondents that said that they were not at all satisfied with Agile rose from 6% to 15%. So well over 100% increase in that dissatisfaction count. And then thirdly, and this one I think dovetails so tightly with this hybrid team planning complexity and requirement, where you can really add value back to your organization and really yield material benefit, especially given the investment your company has made in Agile, is that among those not satisfied with Agile, the top reason is because their company still has many legacy systems requiring a mixed approach. And we all know, and let's be honest, those legacy systems won't go away. Operational work won't go away. Some things will have to be done under a waterfall-based approach. So confining ourselves to just this Agile-based approach leaves out of the equation all the other stuff that has to happen. And because of that, we then yield a mixed methodology environment where this hybrid team planning complexity arises. And the better we can be around hybrid team planning, the more success our business can have, and the better success the Agile transformation can yield to the business. All right, so again, we can really benefit the business here and improve by improving our hybrid team planning capabilities. Okay, so that's the primer. That's kind of a high-level overview of what we're going to discuss today. But before we do that, I wanted to touch on the agenda for the day. We started at 10:30. We're scheduled to go till 11:30. Depending upon the pace and speed and how well I talk, we might go to 11:30. We generally will end up a little bit earlier than that. But that leaves time for everyone to get more things done at their real job, and of course follow up with us if there's any questions afterwards. We love to engage with customers, prospects, and others if there's things you want to share with us, ask questions, and more, and we'll talk more about that at the end. But what we'll effectively do is kind of walk through an intro, tell you about us. I have a very exciting product update to share. We just launched version 9.2, which included over 100 pages of release notes and huge updates to the product. But then we have a new product soft launching at the IT Symposium in Orlando next week, which I think you might all find very exciting. I'll share more of that in a moment. We'll then jump into the main topic of the realities and challenges of hybrid team planning. We'll then talk about how we can solve those hybrid team planning challenges using our product Tempus resource, and then discuss some next steps and wrap up. So that's today's agenda. So really quickly, who are we? I know a number of people that signed up are current clients, know us well. For those of you that don't, the company is ProSymmetry. The product is Tempus resource. We're used by hundreds of large enterprises all over the world to help size, plan, and execute on their work with extreme focus on what-if analysis, scenario planning, resource capacity planning, and resource forecasting. So we take things from a different perspective. We don't focus on the task nature. We focus on the resource nature of your project portfolio and capacity planning challenges. We rate extremely highly. You can, and this is pulled from Gartner peer review, where companies have to go in and submit. It gets vetted by Gartner, whether you like it or not, or like them or not. It's probably one of the best sources to go when evaluating a vendor. And you can see we score extremely high on scalability, capacity and resource management, security, usability, and our customer support always takes us to the top of the list. So I'd encourage you to go there to read more about us. I'd also note that in terms of analyst coverage, we've been named in the past 3 Magic Quadrants for Adaptive Project Management and Reporting, and we've been named in the past 8 Hype Cycles for Strategic Portfolio Management. So we know this space extremely well. We interact with hundreds of customers every week, so we're generally right in the mix of the main challenges and pains you're having. And this hybrid planning matter has been one that's been plaguing a number of you for quite a while. So I'm excited to share with you today how we can improve on that. We like to be in the space and in the market and out there interacting with prospects, customers, subject matter experts. So we go to, exhibit, and speak at a large number of conferences. It's amazing. I can't believe this year is almost over. But in Q4, we will be at 3 shows. So if you're able to, please swing by, say hello. Next week, we're at the Gartner IT Symposium in Orlando. We'll be at booth 724. We'll be speaking on Tuesday at 4:20 p.m. Eastern Time. And then 2 weeks after that, we will be exhibiting and speaking at the Gartner IT Symposium Barcelona. We'll be at booth 602, and we speak at 11:05 local time on the 6th. Both our presentations will be the same. It will be on accelerating transformation with strategic portfolio and resource management. So it should be a great talk led by Lloyd Norman, one of my colleagues here at ProSymmetry. And then the 12th of November, we'll be at the House of PMO in Edinburgh, Scotland. So again, if you're able to, swing by, say hello. We'd love to chat and can certainly talk through the product, methodologies, challenges, pains, and the like. So jumping into the main portion of today's presentation, which is the reality and challenges of hybrid team planning. Okay, so teams aren't new. Team-based planning has been around probably since they built the pyramids. There was probably a team of guys that could do a very specific task. So teams aren't new. Really where this team-based challenge has arisen has been in relation to the growth of Agile. Now we know that Agile Manifesto launched in 2001 and had slow and steady growth through 2010 in the software development space. But again, it wasn't the origins of team-based planning. Before Agile, actually software was developed, and often it was done under iterative approaches, spiral approaches, incremental approaches. What Agile did is it comprehensively unified these methodologies into a very specific methodology, very well thought out, and continues to be to this day. The growth of the methodology really started, of course, in IT, and that was because it was focused on software development. Who owned software development, and mostly still does today? It was IT. So really through the 2010s, and especially through the pandemic, there was explosive growth of Agile and Agile-related investments across organizations within IT, even those that were purely PMO-focused. Others reorganized into more product-centric approaches. But really through and up to even in the mid-2010s, there was 75%, a very shockingly high number, 75% of IT departments using some form of Agile. Now, the problem set of team and hybrid planning has been in IT for a while. It's become much more manifest recently for a variety of reasons. But the problem set has scaled to a very high, very large extent, because the growth of not so much the methodology, but it's been brought with it. So that sort of religion has been brought with it into other areas of the business, product development, engineering, R&D. And it's not been brought there because they said this methodology is so good for building a new product or for doing research and development. It's been brought along because product development and engineering has changed, where almost everything is now software enabled. I mean, think of every product you buy today. There's likely some element that's software enabled inside of it. Think of medical devices. Think of consumer products. Think of your car. I mean, how much software and how many computers are running inside your car? So everything's got software tied to it. And as a result, those teams brought with them their methodology. Teams that were, or organizational groups, product dev R&D, that previously ran very linear, operational, or even waterfall style approaches, brought in these software development teams, and they brought with them again the methodology and dictated, we're going to use this method. And as a result, we've now created a hybrid planning environment of mixed methodologies. So we're just seeing so much more of it, again, because of the growth of software into product dev R&D. We're also seeing, this one's a bit more of a head scratcher, we're seeing more and more Agile-related methodologies in areas like internal audit, where there certainly isn't a intersection or nexus with software development, but perhaps there's been some beneficial correlation between the work that's done in internal audit and maybe the work that's done in software development, oddly enough. So we're starting to see it pop up there. In any case, this team-based planning has been a challenge and continues to grow, and challenges how we size, plan, and execute work, how we forecast delivery, how we plan and then replan our portfolios, how we identify bottlenecks and skill deficiencies, and even more so, how do we determine the costs around our portfolio. But I think if we step back and just kind of look at the forest here from the trees, if we look at these various groups, IT, product development, R&D, engineering, internal audit, you're now looking at the vast or overwhelming share of the project-oriented aspects of the business now having Agile, and as a result having this team and hybrid planning challenge. So this has gotten wide enough where we've really come to market now with a solution for this with Tempus Resource and our team-based planning. So we'll cover this obviously in detail today. Now, if we look at, again, the textbook stuff, the academic stuff, and this is taken from Scaled Agile Framework, and we look at how they think about teams, in isolation, it's, again, very where a team is assembled, a multidisciplinary team from traditionally very siloed organizational groups, and those teams are then fixed. And in isolation, that's fantastic. If we're able to have this and we only do software development, great, very, very simple. The reality, though, and we all know this, assuming you have an organization of any level of scale, I mean, we're relatively a small organization of roughly 50 people, we can't do this. So anytime you look at a mid-size and especially large business, this falls apart right out of the gate. And it's amazing to me how many people get past this without sort of poking holes in it, because even, and I'll highlight it, even Scaled Agile says in their own documentation, non-dedicated resources often complicate ideal saved cost flow planning. Obviously, So when you're in a large organization or mid-size or even larger on the small side, you're going to have operational work, keep the lights on, compliance, audits, accounting, the list goes on and on. You're also going to have waterfall work, whether it's with vendors or internally or the nature of your business. That won't change. And you can't keep creating new teams to address each and every one of those. It just won't work. It's not economically efficient. There are going to be limits on your ability to find the right talent. There will be limits on your ability to pay for that talent. So that, and look, these silos don't go away. Even within this Agile documentation, you'll see the silos remain. It doesn't break the silos down. It shows them. They're just pulled from those silos. So you're always going to have those silos. There's always going to be the ops activity. There's always going to be some element of waterfall, whether it's just some executive or management thinks that's the right way to go or not, it's going to be there. And I think back to that original, on our original slide where we mentioned how companies still have many legacy systems requiring a mixed approach. That's a problem statement that doesn't go away ever. And as a result, you're going to be dealing with this team-based planning and this hybrid team planning reality throughout the life of your career, whether Agile remains or goes away. This slide really just drives it home that you have a common and shared resource pool, and no mid-size or large enterprise, or I would even say any business of any scale, can be 100% Agile. There are always going to be a mix of these different types of work, which will yield a hybrid team planning requirement, which we have to get good at if we want to yield measurable benefit to our investment overall for the business, but also as part of that investment in our Agile transformation. All right, and even if we could, again, break teams into sub-teams to address the operational breakout versus Agile work and waterfall, we're still back to this hybrid team planning scenario because you just don't have the scale, no one does, to address all of these scenarios using rigidly defined, non-dynamic teams. And this is, again, this screen here will show how your work will occur over the next 20, 30, 40 years. It's not going to change. There'll be a mix of methodologies that we have to work within, including teams and named resources, yielding this requirement to be able to effectively perform hybrid team planning. Now, if we look at two scenarios from very common cases that we see with our clients, we have them ourselves, but we see them mostly from our customers who are either midway through an Agile journey, maybe pretty far along. I had a call the other day with a customer that has been, considers themselves like the top tier, top upper echelon of Agile, and they're still saying the same things. They can't plan costing. They don't have insight into their roadmap is very challenging because of the Agile focus, but they have all this other stuff managed that's operational and that's waterfall. So the first scenario is, and I have this here in a bit of a smart aleck, so apologies, but on the left, we have sort of the textbook, and I just call that Fantasyland because it's Fantasyland. We have our resource pool, and we've broken up our people into teams, and those teams deliver continuously according to some sprint cadence. Okay, great. Well, on the right, we have the reality, and that reality is that over time, and I'm showing quarters, but this could happen by week, by month, by fiscal quarter, by year, doesn't matter. The team constitution, unlike what you'd see in the textbooks, in the academic circles, doesn't remain fixed. It could be as simple as people have to leave, people retire, people are terminated, companies reduce forces, people get sick, people go take sabbaticals, and so on, meaning that your team naturally will just not remain fixed. But it gets more complicated in reality. People might move from team to team. Perhaps that person isn't as skilled in a particular method or technologies they need to be and move from a server team to a UI team. That's just a very general example. Or you could move teams and you could be on teams in a partial percentage. Perhaps Sean is part of team 2, but Sean, really 25% of his time is going to be on operational work. So we're just going to say 75% of Sean is on that other team. So now there's a portion that's not team aligned. You also have scenarios where resources will be on multiple teams concurrently, which flies entirely in the face of the dogma of the religion that you're not supposed to do that. But we have customers routinely tell us that that's normal. Or that, again, you'll see in the next slide, that they're spread even more thin across even multiple teams and multiple direct assignments. This can also be the case just based on financial constraints and skill constraints. Think of the people in your organization that are most difficult to attain or get or upskill. They're going to be very expensive. They're going to be in small supply. Finding them in the market could take 6, 12, 18 months, and you're competing globally against other large organizations that need that highly skilled cybersecurity resource, that highly skilled AI resource, that highly skilled data scientist. So it might become a matter of, we can't get this person, even if we do have the money, so we have to split them across multiple teams. Again, this dynamic nature of teams is something you have to be able to address to more effectively perform hybrid team planning. Okay, so this is something we'll get to. Now, the second example I'm bringing up is these are not mutually exclusive. These are not one or the other of the first one, which again, people moving and teams being dynamic. But the other challenge here is you're likely to have both of these, which is that, again, you organize your teams and people move back and forth between the teams, which I have as these little blue arrows. But then, of course, you have waterfall projects, you have operational projects and activities. You may assign teams to those things. We've seen that happen. But more importantly, you're also pulling from the teams themselves by going directly to the pool to yank people out to put them on waterfall projects. So you're not having these dedicated teams doing just their work. You might pull them back into cross-functional teams in more of a matrix style assignment process, which people, again, they want to get away from, but they just can't, given the nature and how their business performs and the mixed methodologies that reside at the same point in time in those businesses. So being able to address all of this is going to be critical to effectively handling hybrid team planning, because if we can't plan by a mix of named resources and team resources and roles and skills and do things like resource requests and approvals for both teams and named resources, we can't effectively maximize how we address hybrid team-based planning. Okay, so what we've got here before we jump into the actual demo itself is, how do we master hybrid team planning? And that word is probably a terrible choice. Like, can you achieve mastery here? I don't know. But maybe that should say improving or just getting better at hybrid team planning. And I've boiled it down to 6 key areas that we'd want to focus on. And the demo will kind of touch on each one of these. I'll do it in kind of a different cadence, so we're touching on things efficiently and not jumping around as much. But these are the 6 areas that we'd want to focus in on and getting much, much better at. And we believe Tempus solves all of these and gives you capabilities beyond this. Number one, and the first thing, is the dynamic nature of teams. This gets back to, as people come and go, as we split people between teams, yeah, we know we're not supposed to, but hey, that's our business and we're going to do it anyway. Or we knowingly say we do Agile, but we don't really care. We're just calling it Agile. That's fine. The reality is you still have to be able to break out and form what those teams look like and be able to include and exclude people from teams over time to build out that dynamic nature. So that's the first thing, is at least be able to model what your team construction looks like. Just doing that gives you visibility beyond what you'd have today out of any traditional PPM tool, certainly out of Excel, or even out of a Jira or ADO. I mean, you're just not going to be able to handle this. The second part is just the ability to plan in a hybrid fashion. How can I plan by mixing named people? That's the reality of my business, where I might have think of an internal audit space. You might have a director of audit, a director of finance, a manager of finance, and then you bring in different teams. Maybe there's a financial crimes team, a special audit team, and the same would be the case in R&D, product dev, and elsewhere. So the ability to plan both by named, maybe role, skill, whatever, just like Tempus does today, but also assign teams of resources will be critical. So we have both the named and team resources mixed and matched on as many projects as might be necessary. So addressing hybrid planning is going to be critical. 3, and this comes with number 2 really, or should, is visibility into that assignment. How do I now get roll-ups and understandings of where is my team allocated? What is that team's percentage allocation or level of allocation, or what is my gap analysis by team using different units of measure, percentage of the team, hours of the team's capability, story points. We'll get to that in a moment. But having visibility into the team and named resource assignments in one place is sort of a game, not sort of, it is a game changer compared to what our clients are using, we're trying to do today. Many of them, frankly, just bury their head in the sand and will often create just a resource that represents the team and then name people directly. But then you have all sorts of disconnects in planning, in costing, in capturing of actuals. So again, that's not ideal. So planning by both named people and teams is critical. Number 4, labor-related costs. How do I handle team-related costs? Does my team have its own rate? Or should we dynamically calculate the costs of our team given the team members or the team constituency? So if the team changes from 10 resources to 5, back to 10, down to 8, its cost should reflect that team constitution. Also, each member of that team might have they have their own escalating resource rate. Whereas Sean might move from $10 an hour to $20 an hour between month A and month B. Well, my team costs should be calculated from all of that complexity. And how can we solve that problem? That's going to be another one we need to address. The next one, number 5, how do we effectively measure the story points around our team's velocity? You know, it's frustrating to a lot of folks that come from more traditional delivery backgrounds to look at, well, if a team has 20 people, the story points velocity should be on par with that. Well, that may not be the case. How do we have a disconnect between the overall team's hourly and FTE capacity versus its story points? So how do we have a team with maybe 20 people and it has a 2 story point velocity, whereas we have another team with 5 people and a 20 story point velocity? And then how do we then plan using story points, but still be able to effectively align all of our data? So if our teams are planned by story point, but our named people are planned by percentage, how do I now unify that into a single vision of hourly allocation or FTE-based allocation? How do we solve that? Tempus is going to do that for us. And then number 6, how do we capture actuals? This is still a critical and challenge for our customers that are just named resource-centric, not hybrid, which is how do I get actuals for my people? And Tempus has the ability to integrate. You can upload through Excel, type the numbers in, bring the data in through Tempus timesheets. But what about our teams? What if our teams, we need to capture actuals? How can we do that? Can the members of those teams get assignments on their timesheet? We'll show that as we work through Tempus as well. All right, so these are the 6 things we want to address as we attempt to maybe not master, but certainly improve on our hybrid team planning to maximize our investment in our agile transformation and just overall benefit the business with regards to sizing, planning, and delivering our work, and of course understanding the timelines. So now we're going to jump into live demo. So let's jump into an instance of Tempus here and make sure I'm properly authenticated. Okay, great. So where I'd like to start is just taking you through the process of constructing team resources in Tempus, because that starts to solve, I think, 3 or 4 of those 6 major topics, which is number 1, how do we define the constitution of the team? 2, how do we align our velocity to the team? How do we build the membership? And then how do we generate the costs for that team? And that handles, just that alone gets you pretty far before we even start to put teams as assignments against projects, audits, epics, and so on. So let's first browse to the Resource Management tab, and I'm going to hide this filter. So obviously Tempus has the ability to build out rate structures, skill matrices, attributes, resource documents, continuing education, everything and anything you'd want around your resources. But now let's look at creating a new type of resource, a team resource. So if we jump to a team resource, we first start on this team capacity tab. Now, this team capacity tab lets me, and I'll first give this a name. Let's call this team webinar. If I could type. So first things first, our team has to have a almost like a project, kind of a start and end. It needs kind of a charter. When's it going to start and how long does it exist for? And you might build this team out for, let's say, 3 years. All right. Now, what I'm doing first as I build the team is I might search for roles, for skills, for availability information. And honestly, none of that may play a role, but it's all here. So if I wanted to insert different columns around skills, departments, business units, we might look in just our biometrics group, and we might throw a heat map on top of this and say, well, who's available to be part of the team? And that may not be a discussion you have, but I'm just making you aware that it's here. So let's go ahead and add Diane, Melanie, Sarah, and how about Liam? Okay, so we've added 4 people to the team, and now notice we have this displayed by month. And by default, each member of the team is included on the team 100%, meaning I'm reserving them that amount for this team's related activities and assignments. You could change this, of course, and look at this by fiscal period, year, quarter, week. It's up to you. And we can also now contour this. And this gets back to that dynamic nature. Whereas let's assume Diane is 100% the whole time, Liam's 100, but Melanie maybe is just 50% on this team. And we can now fill this across the board. So now I'm able to model what does my team look like. And this is going to play a role in calculating the overall work, story point conversions, and of course the cost information when we go to assign our team resources. But there's also scenarios where someone may come and go from the team. So let's look at Sarah, and Sarah is the 4th resource we added to the team. And we might say, well, Sarah kind of leaves the team from April until August, which means we might zero her out for the remainder of the team, or we might know or not know and add her back later that she now goes back to 100% starting in September, or maybe we gradually reintroduce her to the team and we go to 25 to 50, 75, back up to 100% as she ramps back up as part of the team. So this contouring capability, number one, lets us realistically reflect the constitution of our team, realistically reflect people coming and going from the organization, from the team, or those events that just happen, people leaving and coming back to the organization. And it also, of course, helps us and drives the calculations, if we choose to, for the team's costs. All right? Now, let's go ahead and just save this team. And what I'll do next is, the other question we had was, well, how do we know the story point-based velocity? Now, for many of you, you might say, look, we don't do that, we don't care, and that's fine. But for some of you, you'll say, no, that's actually a really critical factor for us, is understanding not just the working hour capability of the team and the implied cost and the dynamic nature, but how do I associate story points to this team? Now, in this case, and again, you could do this by different time frames, but let's say the team's constitution, and we purposefully decided to allow you to set story point velocities over time. Because number one, we know it's going to come out of the market. And two, just saying simplistically, oh, this team has 10 story points that it can produce. Well, is that really real? What if you look back at the prior year and you say, look, we planned to do 10 story points. We didn't deliver that. It's really an 8 story point based team, assuming nothing else changes. Wouldn't you want to know that the team's ability to deliver changes over a year and that you're improving, that your true velocity wasn't 10, it's actually 8. So from my standpoint, that's super valuable. And Tempus will allow you to do this. So let's say we're 10 story point delivery capability through 2024. We then realize that number drops to, let's say, 8 story points and going forward. Okay, so that can all be modeled, and this plays a role in our calculations as we start to assign our teams. Now, right now, you're not seeing the calculated cost per story point or the calculated cost per hour. We're going to come back here in just a moment. Let's go ahead and save. And what we'll do next is jump to the attributes panel for the resource, for the team. Before we do that, recognize that, and those of you that are Tempus users will be aware, notice there's also an audit log for every assignment and change to the team. We can track and manage files and uploads related to the team. Our Sheets feature, which is often used for things like historical experience, continuing education, compliance training. That's also available for your teams, as well as a skill matrix capability. So all of those features you'd use for named resources are also available for teams, including resource request workflows, which we're not going to go through today. And definitely hit us up if you're interested in learning more. But if you said our teams, we have a unique process where our teams have to be approved before they're actually assigned. That soft booking, hard booking, committed capability is enabled through our resource request workflow feature set, which is also inclusive of teams. So let's continue. We'll go back to the attributes panel. And just like we have attributes on resources like skill, role, location, department, all of those attributes can be assigned to your team resources as well. What I want to call out here, though, is if we drill down under system fields, and I have this reorganized, is that, and this is really important because this came from a number of our clients who we spoke with before we started building team resources, was what is one of your number one, number two, number three pain points? And for many, the challenge around deriving and calculating the team costs was exceptionally high on the list because of this problem of people come and go, their percentages, assignments to the teams change, and figuring out that number is a huge challenge. It takes a ton of time to figure it out, and then it's kind of thrown away and not recorded. So what we made sure to do is with our team resources, we brought about not only manual rate. So if you wanted to say the team is $500 an hour, you can do that. You can also have an advanced rate where the rate changes over time. But for most customers, you're going to use this auto-calculated rate. That means that based on the team's constitution, as people come and go, as they change in percentage, as their underlying rates change, as they get raises or their costs go up, that will flow through into the calculation of costs for this particular team. And let me just make sure that's there. Let's jump back to our capacity screen. There we go. So now notice that since we're using the auto-calculate rate capability, our team costs are now displayed for us. So we can now see what is the calculated cost per story point. So I now know, based on the overall team's rate and the number of story points we complete or are as part of our capacity, that's $4,000 ranging to $2,500 and then back up as the team changes in constitution. So you can see these numbers adjusting over time as, again, people come and go, percentage inclusion changes, and underlying rates change. It also gives us an idea of what is the calculated cost per hour. So an hour is an hour, regardless of whether it's a team or resources. And if a team has multiple people, it has more hours as part of its capacity. We now have the calculated cost per hour as part of that team. So this all flows through based on the team members and their percentage inclusion and their underlying costs as well as rate structures. All right, so very beneficial stuff just in creating the resources alone. Now, if we drill into and look at the challenge of, well, how do we actually plan the resources? You know that Tempus has both direct project assignments as well as bulk planning assignments. And you can plan at the project level or at the task level. It's up to you. To keep things simple, and because we have many people joining us that aren't current or active Tempus users, I won't go into the bulk planning screens and some of the other areas where team resources are fully available, but we will just create a new project. So let's go create regular project here, just a regular project, not from a template, not cloning another project, and we'll call this project ABC. And we'll give this a time frame, and we'll say it's from October until the end of the year. So at this point, we're given a very simple planning grid. And those of you Tempus this is what most folks are after. You can certainly do the detailed critical path scheduling and all that stuff, but most folks are with Tempus because they have a multi-million-dollar product to do that stuff, but everyone's using Excel. Or you realize the benefits of using that advanced planning product don't manage operational work, don't handle Agile-related planning, where Tempus can handle all of those methodologies in a simplified planning grid. So what I can do from here is I'll just search for a team. Let's go, I think it's infrastructure, if I can find it. There we go. We'll add our infrastructure team, and let's add our webinar team. All right, so team resources are denoted with a separate little avatar. And at this point, again, whether it's by month whether it's by week, quarter, year, whatever it doesn't matter. Let's actually go out. We'll go out a little bit longer. So we have a bit more on the screen. Here we go. I can now plan my resources, in this case just teams, by hours, by cost, by percentage. Notice here there's a calculated cost. You can get that information. FTE, so percentage of the overall team, and you can also plan by story point. So if I wanted to specify by story point, what does this team look like? Let's go ahead and expand these guys, and we'll pop in our story points. We'll say this is one story point, and my team webinar here, I need 2 story points over that time frame. I can now jump back to my cost view and immediately identify what is the cost for those story points, but also what is the calculation that goes from story point back to the number of hours and or how much of the overall team is needed. So just inside of this planning grid, before we get to the bulk planning, what if, reporting, and other screens that are enabled for visibility and other capabilities, as a planner, I can quickly identify, well, that number of story points equates to this amount of the overall team. Now, in addition to being able to plan by the teams, again, I might mix in named individuals, and they could be members of the team. So I might say, let's bring in Caroline, let's bring in Bruce, and there's, again, a wide range of ways this. It can be done through resource requests, through advanced replacements. Tempus is exceptionally deep with regards to replacement, alerting, reporting, and the like around resource planning. And now within these named individuals, we'll do the same thing, either at the project level or by task. I can now specify, well, here's my team allocations. My named resources, let's do 5%. And how about Bruce's 25%? And this, of course, can change over time. The point being, I can now mix and match named resources and team resources in the same planning infrastructure to now gain global visibility across my environment. And this is within one individual project. This could be across your entire portfolio. We can bulk plan and the like. I also get real-time heat mapping based on the team capacity, named resource capacity. We have, as we're planning, this cross-project allocation view to quickly tell us what are the projects that the team webinar is assigned to. Let's look at the infrastructure team. I think they have a bit more. This tells me right away that over the time frame that I'm planning, infrastructure team is also allocated across project Y and a team planning project. So all of that becomes available, and I would get, if I'd like, story point based cross-project allocation, percentage, cost, as well as hours to better understand how that team is being utilized. And that's looking at this information within a single individual project. We haven't gone to, and I'm not sure we'll have time to jump into all the reporting, the what if analysis, and other capabilities that are part of that team resource feature. Okay, so again, we now have all of this flowing through, and we have all of our calculations, and this all, of course, rolls up and rolls down. Now, another point that we want to touch on is how do we capture actuals? Now, if you're familiar, and let's just jump back into our project inventory. Let's go project Y. This is just one of them. I forget. I think we started with a different one. That's okay. Each project has not only 2 data sets, but it also has a planned, actual, and remaining data set. So this allows me, if I'd like, to input actuals directly in the project. This might come through the API, Excel uploads, and so on, but it can also flow through as part of, and that's mostly through reporting, through our timesheeting functionality. So what I've done as a setup is I created a resource named Larry. So let's go to Larry Walsh. And Larry is not only an individual assigned directly, but Larry is also part of a range of teams. So you can see his various project direct assignments, but he's also part of the infrastructure team. Well, I want to be able to capture actuals for Larry, but I also want to be able to capture the actuals of where Larry is a team member or a constituent of a team. So to do that, we've fully integrated all of our team-based planning with our timesheeting functionality. And our timesheeting functionality is very robust. There's tons of capabilities, many of which are designed to support things like worker council regulations in Europe, R&D reporting requirements in the US, document upload, different views and visualizations, alerting, and the like. But let's, in this case, let's log out. And I did a couple assignments ahead of time, and we're going to log in as Larry, and hopefully I haven't forgotten Larry's password. Otherwise, we're going to wrap early. Nope, did. Okay. And Larry is a timesheet user, so he's received notification that, hey, you've got a timesheet due. And Larry launches his timesheet. And Larry immediately sees everything he's currently assigned to. And he could jump into these projects, view their timelines, he can track notes, look at the attributes, remove things from timesheets, set comments, upload files. So there's a lot that can be done here by Larry along the way. But what's important and really critical for our process of capturing and managing actuals, not just for the named people, but also for our teams, is that on Larry's timesheet, Larry sees not only his direct assignments, but he also sees anything where he's been assigned by virtue of being a team member. So we see a team planning project, that's where I'm on the infrastructure team. Project ABC, that's where I'm in the infrastructure team. Project Y, same thing. So as Larry inputs actuals, let's say 8 hours here, 8 hours here, then 4 and 4, 4 and 4, and then maybe 8. These actuals are now captured not only against Larry, but also against, in this case, the infrastructure team. So 8 hours in the infrastructure team and also 8 hours for Larry. 4 hours in the infrastructure team, but also 4 for Larry, and so on and so forth. So this would give us the ability, when this flows through, to report and get actuals, not just on Larry individually, but also on our team, which gives us other capabilities to look at not only the team to individual hybrid breakdown, but also the performance of individuals within the team. So you could drill in here and look historically to understand how much and how is the team performing at an individual level. If the team is being booked out at 100%, and that equates to 1,000 hours, and really we're seeing 800 hours being booked, and there's a couple of culprits. One, it could be a process violation of people being pulled from teams to go do direct work. It could mean that there's additional upskilling or hiring that's required, or it could mean there's a performance-related challenge. I mean, it could mean obviously more than that, but all that information is captured and available through this integrated timesheeting capability. We'll go ahead and save that draft. This is also available in a grouped view. So if I wanted to view this in a grouped mode, looking by project, again, I'm seeing in this case my infrastructure teamwork versus my individual direct assignments. And this can again be pushed back to my timesheet manager, who can then choose to approve, reject, and all of this flows through into reporting. Okay, so looking at the time, there's so much more to cover. Reporting, analytics, what if, capacity, gap analyses, and the like. But what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to switch back to the slide deck. There's only about 8 minutes left, and jumping into those other areas, and I did promise to give you a few minutes back, and I apologize, but apparently I didn't give you that. But moving forward, wrapping things up, obviously hybrid team planning is going to be a critical skill for you individually, but also critical for your organization to maximize its existing investment in Agile and hopefully turn around some of those dissatisfaction scores and more effectively drive benefit to the business around visibility, costing, and analytics. And Tempus can support all of that. I would encourage you, if you have an interest here, reach out to us if you want a more fulsome demonstration of the capability. Of course, if you're not a current customer, we do support and do free trials. It's the most thorough free trial process I've ever seen out of any enterprise software vendor on earth, maybe more than it should be. That's up for debate. You can go to our website, ProSymmetry.com, and make that request. You can reach out to me directly. My email's on the screen. Or if you work with anyone else at ProSymmetry, just please reach out. And of course, we'll be at these 3 separate events in the next 30 days in the US, Orlando, Barcelona, and then Edinburgh, Scotland. If you can, please come by and say hello. We'll have pens and glass cleaners, so you can, at a minimum, get that. And of course, stop by to learn more, or stop in our speaking sessions to hear and learn more. So with that being said, thank you for attending. Again, if any questions come about, please send them to us. If you'd like to learn more or do a demo or test drive the product, please reach out. With that, Thank you very much and have a great rest of the day.